When we recognize salt, we begin to reclaim our boundary connections. We realize that connection doesn't require sacrifice, it requires structure. This rasa teaches us to choose closeness that supports, not swallows you. We build emotional hydration. We learn to hydrate our nervous system, not just with water, with a safe presence, a self trust, a sensory nourishment. We stop drying ourselves out for others. We soften without spilling. We stop mistaking leakage for love. We learn to contain our energy so what we give becomes potent, clean, and meaningful. Hey everyone, welcome back to A Talk with G, the podcast where ancient medicine meets soul remembrance. I'm your host, Gia, and today we are flowing into episode 4 of our sixth taste in the Ayurvedic series. So far, we've explored Madhura, the sweet taste of nourishment and rest. We've danced with Alma, our sour taste that is awakening and honest transformation. And today, we're stepping into the rich, steady embrace of Lavana, the salt taste, the rasa of connection, grounding, hydration, and coherence. Salt is the taste of remembrance, of coming back into the body, of rediscovering your place in the whole, within yourself and within the world. It doesn't provoke or numb, it binds. It weaves things together. It holds. It stabilizes. So, if you've been feeling a little scattered, emotionally dry, disconnected from others, or even from your own body, this episode is a soft landing. The salty taste might just be the anchor you didn't know you needed. Let's explore how this rasa doesn't just flavor our food, but reconnects us to everything. Salty as belonging, boundaries, and coming back to the center. In the language of Ayurveda, Lavana is the rasa of cohesion. It doesn't just flavor our food, it binds the elements together. It softens, penetrates, it pulls inward, not to hide, but to remember what we're made of. Where sweet builds and sour awakens, salt unites. It carries the energy of the ocean, rhythmic, steady, and ancient. It brings us back to the waters within, to fluidity, to the inner tides, to the emotional and energetic connectivity. Lavana isn't flashy or fiery. It doesn't need to be shouted to be heard. It's the hum of the belonging, the felt sense of home, the quiet whisper in the body that says, you were still connected, you were still whole. Salt taste is deeply embodied. It doesn't live in the mind, it lives in the blood, the skin, the tears, and the sweat. It's the rasa of hydration and retention, helping the body hold on to water, energy, and vitality. But symbolically, it is also what helps us hold on to ourselves. In the emotional body, salt governs healthy boundaries, connection without merging, the ability to stay present and emotionally available, the sense of I belong here, to my body, to my life, to this moment. It's what keeps things from falling apart, what pulls us back together when we've been scattered, overextended, or running on empty. It's no coincidence that when we cry, our tears are salty, that when we sweat, when we labor, and when we release, salt comes with it. Salt is a taste of effort and intimacy. It is what we are offered when we show up for life fully, bodily, and willingly. Psychologically, the salt taste relates to trust, stability, and emotional coherence. When we feel emotionally dry, disconnected, fragmented, or brittle, salt softens the system. It helps us pour enough to receive, but structured enough to not lose ourselves. It's the taste of reconnection after rupture, rebuilding after depletion, receiving without leaking. When the world has been harsh and we've been overperforming and overly alone, the salt taste reminds us that we are part of something larger, the ocean, the family of things, the web of support that's always been there, waiting for us to come home. Ayurvedically, salt supports electrolyte balance, hydration and cellular function, joint health and nerve conduction, appetite regulation, the retention of minerals, fluid, and vitality. It is warming, moist, and slightly heavy, deeply penetrating. It brings nourishment deeper into our tissues, not just to the surface. Energetically, salt helps us digest experience at a more embodied level, not an overanalyzing, but feeling our way back into safety and self contentment. You see, where sour brings sharpness and sweet offers softening, salt holds the in between, the middle ground, where connection doesn't require collapse, where relationship doesn't require rescue, where being held doesn't mean being consumed. Lavana teaches us that you can connect without losing yourself, you can be soft without leaking energy, and you can receive and still remain whole. This is why this rasa is considered one of the most grounding and stabilizing tastes in Ayurveda. Not because it slows you down, but it keeps you whole while you move. Water and fire, alchemy of presence and penetration. As we know, in Ayurveda, each taste is a combination of two of the five elements. Salt rasa is born of water and fire, a combination that carries both the softness of surrender and the spark of digestion. It is this rare fusion of flow and heat that gives salt its unique energetic intelligence, the ability to move energy inward and to bind and absorb, to hold without hardening. Water offers moisture, lubrication, emotional fluidity, sensory depth, nourishment, and receptive behavior. Fire brings digestive strength, penetration, warmth, activation, and transformation. Together, water and fire create this taste that is grounded yet vital, soft yet stimulating, moistening yet clarifying, comforting yet subtle energizing. This is the rasa that embodies aliveness, a flavor that says you are here and you are whole. This rasa softens the edges without dulling the spark. It hydrates the system while supporting the fire of transformation. It brings your awareness from scattered thoughts back to felt presence. Think of sea salt, rock salt, or even mineral rich taste of sweat on your skin. These aren't just flavors, they're elemental memories, calling the body back to coherence. And every dosha responds uniquely to the energies of each rasa. This rasa has a powerful influence, especially on the nervous system, tissue, and emotional field. While it pacifies our vata, because you see, for our vata types, salt is deeply grounding, moistening, and stabilizing. It hydrates properties that soothe the dryness in the skin, the joints, the colon, and the emotional feel. It enhances absorption, helping vata types not only eat, but assimilate nourishment physically and emotionally. The salt taste quiets the scattered minds, warms the cold limbs, and says, you're not floating anymore. You're safe to sink into yourself. But on the flip side, it aggravates our pitta and kapha. For our pitta, this added fire can stroke internal heat, especially in the hot seasons or during the periods of intense stress or inflammation. It can increase acid reflux, skin sensitivity, and irritability when overused. For our kaphas, the water retention nature of the salt can contribute to sluggishness, digestion issues, emotional dullness, or dependency patterns. Kapha is already very heavy and cohesive. Salt in excess can weigh it down even more. But this taste isn't just about flavor, it's about function. It's the rasa that supports assimilation, circulation, and cohesion, not just in the body, but in your emotional and energetic life. It helps the digestive system absorb nutrients, the mind retain information, the heart sustain connection, the soul stayed embodied even during movement and change. This is why salt is so deeply connected to touch, sweat, tears, sensuality. It brings us into contact with ourselves and with others. It's the rasa that says, you are part of this body, you are part of this movement, and you are not separate. In no way are we saying this is bad. I'm saying balance it. This rasa invites you to ask, are you dry, scattered, or depleted, or already holding too much? Are you emotionally parched or clinging to the familiar? Is your body asking for more cohesion or more release? The medicine of this rasa is when you become too airy, too intellect, too disembodied. You're emotionally dried out from overextending, overcaring, or over isolating. You need to reclaim your boundaries and stay open. But too much and the same taste that binds can begin to bloat. And here's the wisdom that we're taught: let the rasa meet reality, not the story. When choosing with awareness, this rasa becomes a sacred act of reconnection to our tissues, to our people, and to the present moment. When coherix becomes a form of healing. When received with awareness, the salt taste becomes more than seasoning. It becomes stabilization, a sacred return to the center, contentment. In a world that often encourages disembodiment, overexertion, and emotional fragmentation, this process teaches us something radical. You do not need to leave yourself to be loved. You can stay connected and stay whole. You can soften without dissolving. This rasa brings us back to our body, back to our boundaries, back to the depth of remembering that we're still part of something and also enough as we are. Let's explore this rasa and what it offers across all layers of being. When consumed mindfully, this taste can enhance our electrolyte regulation and cellular hydration. Salt governs the absorption and retention of water, which is critical for every psychological function, from our brain signaling to our lymph flow to energy metabolizing. This is the hydration on a deep cellular level, not just a surface replenishment. For our nerve connection and our mental focus, salt supports the flow of electrical impulses. In the nervous system, with proper sodium levels, mental fog clears, focus sharpens, and response improves. Our Agni enhances with this. Salt taste helps stimulate saliva and our acids and our digestive enzymes, which improve appetite, digestion, and nutrient absorption, especially when digestion feels dry, weak, or cold. And most of all, it balances our fluid, our circulatory support. This wonderful tarted taste in life and in food helps regulate our blood pressure, maintains blood volume, and supports the movement of our prana through the tissues, preventing stagnation while anchoring the flow. This is how the body says, I know what to hold, what nourishes me, and release what doesn't. And where sweet says you're safe and sour says you're ready, salt says you're whole, even when you're in a relationship. You see, the emotional balance of this is rebuilding internal coherence. When life feels chaotic, when you feel stretched too thin, when you're pouring out without pausing, this rasa draws back your energy inward. It helps you become emotionally boundaried without becoming emotionally closed off. It cultivates belonging without dependency. It nourishes the need for connection, but not at the cost of self abandonment. It reminds us you can be held and still be yourself and still hold yourself. It stabilizes our entire body, the energy in itself. This rasa energy reinforces the container of self, helping regulate leaks of the aurotic field. If you've been feeling emotionally, quote unquote, spongy or over empathetic, or unable to distinguish between your emotion and someone else's, this is the rasa that brings fortification. This is the taste that allows for tears, sweat, and sensuality, the sacred expression of water element in motion. It gives permission to release through embodiment rather than analyzing. And it restores sacred boundaries. Boundaries is a word that gets thrown around nowadays, but it's often misunderstood as walls. In Ayurveda, this is seen as a container of vitality. This is the rasa that helps you say, this is where I end and you begin. And both are sacred. And like every rasa, this rasa can and should be experienced in more than just food. You could feel the salt taste in a warm bath infused with mineral salts, a deep, grounding hug that lingers just long enough. The taste of your own sweat after a cathartic workout and emotional release. I know, doesn't sound appetizing, but it happens. A moment of honest eye to eye connection with someone who sees you. The steady rhythm of your own breath, anchoring you to be here and now. The stillness that comes when you finally exhale and just belong. These are salty rituals. They bind our energy, hydrate our spirit, and remind us of the sacredness of staying. In a world that often confuses closeness with codependency, this rasa shows us another way. It shows us that we can be with others without losing ourselves, we can be generous without depletion, and we can receive and still stay rooted. When you work with this rasa consciously, it becomes the medicine of maturity, helping us embody relationship intelligence, energetic clarity, and self regulation connection. We no longer fear being alone and we no longer fear of being close because you trust your body to hold what matters and release what doesn't. When connection becomes collapsed, this is where salt gets slippery, literally, emotionally, and energetically. Because while this rasa is deeply grounded, hydrating, and connected when used consciously, it's also one of the most easily overused rasa in modern life. And when overconsumed through food, energy exchange, and emotional closeness or attachment to an external source of worth, it begins to do the opposite of what it promises. Instead of stabilizing, it bloats. Instead of bonding, it overbinds. Instead of soothing, it sedates. Instead of helping us stay grounded to ourselves, it can cause us to leak energy, collapse boundaries, and become too absorbed in others. You see, when we're disconnected from our internal source of nourishment and belonging, we often reach for salt, not just in food, but in relationship, roles, responsibilities that feel grounded but slowly depletes us. Let's explore the deeper meaning behind these habits that drive unconscious use of the salt taste. You see, creativity intensity, mistaking drama for connection. When we've gone too long without true intimacy, we may find ourselves drawn to an emotional charged relationship, high stake roles, an environment filled with quote unquote salts, high flavor, high emotion, high tension. It gives us the illusion of connection, but often leaves us feeling scattered and drained. Emotional overabsorption, the boundaries collapse. Salt governs cohesion, but too much, and we start absorbing energy that doesn't belong to us. Empaths and caretakers often over identify with the pain of others, trying to carry, fix, or feel it all. And the result is emotional burnout disguised as compassion. We develop fear of separation, clinging to familiarity. When we equate connection with survival, we may find it hard to let go of people, routines, and identities that no longer nourish us. We stay too long, we hold too tightly, and we confuse stability with stagnation. And then we have the disassociation with comfort, over consuming food, touch, and attention. Salt is meant to be grounded, but in excess, it can sedate awareness. We may use salty snacks, physical closeness, sensational pleasure to avoid discomfort, rather than connect consciously. When this rasa is consumed unconsciously or in excess, whether through food, people pleasing, over connection, emotional dependency, the effects of the ripple across all the levels of our being. We step into people pleasing and lack of boundaries. We over identification with other people's pain. We have difficulty saying no without guilt. Emotional dependency or clinging into relationships start to appear. We get burnt out from over caretaking, over performing, feeling like a quote unquote container for others but empty inside, pouring from an empty cup. Nothing to really pour. Physically, this shows up as bloating, water retention, puffiness, especially in the eyes or limbs, elevated blood pressure, cardiovascular strain, swelling in the joints or fingers, dehydration symptoms despite drinking water, overstimulation of taste buds, and reduced sensitivity of other flavors. Impaired kidney or adrenaline function when chronically overused. Just like oversalting food numbs your palate, oversalting life numbs your ability to feel what's truly yours and what isn't. Here's the truth. When we fear disconnection, we offer overconnect. We overattach, we overcare, and we overstay in places where our energy is constantly being drained. But that's not real belonging. That's leakage, energetically, emotionally, and physically. This rasa is meant to teach us how to bind, but only when we're clear on what we're binding to. Because if we are unconsciously binding to chaos, codependency, or validation through service, the very thing that once felt nourishing becomes the thing that erodes our vitality. Healing our relationship to salt taste isn't about cutting people off or removing salt from our meals. It's about reclaiming our center, rebalancing how to give and receive, remembering that connection begins within. It's about learning to say, I could be close and still be sovereign. I could be generous and still have boundaries. I could show up for others without dissolving myself. And when we crave for something salty arise, pause and ask, am I actually dehydrated or energetically depleted? Am I reaching for salt or for grounding? Do I need flavor or do I need space? Am I giving from love or a fear of losing connection? You see, this is how Lavana becomes a sacred rasa again. Not just taste, but a practice, not just the food, but the frequency, a way to live in connection without collapsing our own essence. Now, why is this so important to recognize? The sacred practice of staying with ourselves should be the most important reason. Of all the tastes in Ayurveda, salt may be the one that we often overlook and yet quietly governs some of the most essential needs. Not the need to achieve, not the need to awaken, but the ancestral needing to belong, to land in our body, and to stay connected without losing ourselves. This rasa teaches us that connection is not a luxury, it's psychological, emotionally, and spiritually a necessity. But here is what makes this rasa so important to recognize. Connection without consciousness becomes collapse. Care without contentment becomes depletion. Softness without structure becomes sorrow. And when we do not recognize that we're overusing salt through food, relationships, service, or touch, we begin to confuse closeness with codependency and intimacy with over attachment. When we become aware of how salt functions in our life, not just on the tongue, but in the emotional ecosystem, we begin to see the subtle places where we give too much, hoping to feel enough, merging with others, avoiding to feel alone, cling to routine or relationship, mistake familiarity with stability. When we use food or physical comfort to distract from disconnection within. However, when we recognize it consciously, this rasa becomes the rasa of remembrance. Remembering our needs are sacred. Remembering our body is wise. And remembering that we are allowed to rest within ourselves without reaching for something or someone to hold us. When we recognize salt, we begin to reclaim our boundary connections. We realize that connection doesn't require sacrifice, it requires structure. This rasa teaches us to choose closeness that supports, not swallows you. We build emotional hydration. We learn to hydrate our nervous system, not just with water, with a safe presence, a self trust, a sensory nourishment. We stop drying ourselves out for others. We soften without spilling. We stop mistaking leakage for love. We learn to contain our energy so what we give becomes potent, clean, and meaningful. We stay with ourselves. And one of the most important thing is this rasa invites us to be ourselves in a way that's deeply rooted in relation and not in performance. We stop abandoning ourselves to just be accepted. And finally, we integrate without overextending. We recognize that our capacity to connect begins with how well we integrate our own sensation, boundaries, and breath. Lavana teaches us embody empathy, not energetic approval. In this world that we live in, that could be a little softer, but instead rewards performance and overextension and connection through urgency. Salt is asking us to soften ourselves. Can you stay in your body? Can you stay in a relationship without leaving yourself? Can you give from fullness and not emptiness? To recognize any part of salty is to remember that presence is enough, hydration is sacred, and you do not have to leak your life force to feel loved. So, When you crave for salt or the craving of touch, closeness, or comfort, ask yourself, am I looking for connection or am I clinging? Do I belong here or am I burnt out? Do I need salt or do I need to return to myself? When you recognize this rasa consciously, you stop overgiving to be loved. You start building a relationship where you and your energy are held equally. You stop reaching for connection as an escape. You start choosing connection as integration. You remember you are not separated, you are not too much, and you are not lost. You are a body of salt and water. You are returning home to yourself. Remind yourself you belong to yourself. I want to thank you guys for taking this next step with me in our journey. I know it might not be the most celebrated or dramatic rasa, but in many ways, it's one of the most quietly profound ones because this rasa teaches us something that so many of us have been waiting a lifetime to hear. We do not have to give ourselves away to feel love. We do not have to leak to belong. We are allowed to stay close without disappearing. Whether your craving of salt comes through food, touch, affection, intimacy, this is a rasa that invites you back to coherence, back to the nervous system that doesn't just survive on connection but feels safe inside, back into the body that doesn't perform love but receive it as a birthright. So this week, I invite you to feel into your relationships with salt, not just your meals, but your moments. When you say yes, is this from alignment or from fear of being left behind? When you reach out, is it from fullness or for an empty longing? When you give, is it from love or needing to prove your value? And most of all, can you return to your own shores? Can you soften your edges without spilling your essence? Can you remember that you are already whole? In our next episode, we'll turn up the fire as we explore pungent, the taste of bold expression, sacred discomfort, and a catalytic move. It's the rasa of momentum, truth telling, and activating what's been frozen. But for now, rest here, breathe here, hold yourself the way salt holds water, with presence, with tenderness, and with the permission to stay. If this episode resonated with you, I love to hear how your week goes with this. Tag me at A Talk with G on Instagram or share it with someone who's learning to stay with themselves while staying in love with the life. And until next time, may your boundaries be blessed, may your connections be clean, and may you remember you belong here.